In June of 2015, I set out on a solo journey to Alaska in hopes of reaching Prudhoe Bay in the Arctic Ocean, traveling the Dalton Highway. However, I had limited time and was willing to accept the Arctic Circle as my final destination as Plan B. And Plan B is how it turned out. Perhaps subconsciously I was looking for a reason to return to the Dalton Highway and repeat this incredible trip someday. It may seem a bit ridiculous or even irrational to go through all that preparation and expense of riding the Dalton again, since I was so close to Prudhoe Bay the first time. 301 miles to be exact. But each year that has gone by, since my first trip in 2015, I feel like there's been a little troll inside my head saying, "Ride the Dalton again." And I finally agreed with that troll and said, "Okay, I will." I've had a handful of viewers of my Alaska the Solo Trip series of videos ask some questions about that trip, such as what gear did I take, what tires I rode on, and what would I change if I were to do it again. Some even asked me to do a video on how I did it. Well, this is that video. Even though instructional videos aren't really my thing, I'll approach this video more like a how I did it video, and not a how to do it video. Hopefully you'll either come away from it with some information that might help on your trip, or at the very least you'll come away from it thinking, I'm sure as hell not going to do it that way. I figure either one of those two has got to help a little bit. I won't be going into too much detail, such as how to pack your gear into your panniers and tank bag, because I don't think I've ever packed mine twice the same way on any trip. I'll cover things that I did to prepare for this trip. Here's a menu of the different sections of the video in case you want to skip forward or back to any parts you'd like to see, or any you'd rather not see. I bought my 2014 V-Strom DL1000 Adventure model brand new right off the showroom floor, and still to this day have no regrets. Not a single thing has ever gone wrong with it. Nothing. Knock on wood. The Adventure model came stock with crash bars, which are pretty good, and these nice looking hard plastic side cases that, by the way, don't hold much. Besides that, I just can't stand side-opening side cases, or panniers, and watching all my stuff spill out every time I open them. Those were gonna have to go. Plus, the bike came with this great plastic skid plate. That too was gonna go. I would have preferred spoked wheels over the cast wheels, though. I did take it on a 5 or 6 day 800-mile ride that summer through the mountains in southwestern Colorado, traveling about 400 of those miles on dirt and gravel roads to get a feel for the bike. I was pleasantly surprised. It proved to be by far a better handling bike than my 2012 V-Strom DL1000. That's pretty much it, without getting into too much detail. I had some work to do, and money to spend to get this bike ready for an Alaska trip the following year. In case you might be interested, I'll put the logo of the retailer where I purchased each modification in the bottom left corner of the screen, unless I can't remember. Then you'll see this one. If it's a modification or something else that I changed after the trip, then you'll see this logo on the bottom right corner of the screen, and I'll cover those in the changes section of the video. Keeping in mind the stories I've heard of the large rocks being kicked up by big trucks on the Dalton Highway, the first thing that came to my mind was protecting the critical parts of the bike. So I added this aluminum skid plate, exhaust valve guard, and brake reservoir guard, all made by SW Motec. I was impressed by the quality of the SW Motec products, and installation was easy. I also installed this radiator guard made by R&G. The quality is relatively good and the installation was also easy. My next concern for bike protection was the headlight. I installed this headlight guard and I was really impressed with the fit and quality of it. I also like how it easily pops on and off in order to clean the headlight. Next was the center stand. Great for doing maintenance on the bike, whether on the road or at home. Plus, I added these dual position foot pegs, which are slightly larger than the stock pegs and can be mounted 15 millimeters lower than the stock position foot pegs. And the rubber pad can be removed to reveal a spiked platform for better traction. Both the center stand and foot pegs are SW Motec products. Installation of the center stand was a bit trying, but installation of the foot pegs was a breeze. I love to be seen in traffic, as you can probably tell by all of that bright yellow I wear while riding. A friend of mine once said I look like a wasp on a motorcycle. I'd like to think that all that yellow caught the eye of that person in the F-150 pickup just in the nick of time before he turned left in front of me as I buzzed through that intersection. Staying on the theme of being seen, I installed this flashing LED brake light, which can be set to several different flashing modes in conjunction with your stock brake light. Installation of the brake light frame wasn't too bad, but figuring out the wiring forced me to close the garage door so the neighborhood kids didn't learn any new cuss words. I figured it out eventually. Then I installed these Denali D2 LED lights on the crash bars, which also required purchasing the mounts separately. They're the perfect size, they're bright, and installing the lights themselves was relatively easy. But the wiring? Well, I wanted the high and low beam to integrate with the stock headlights. So no garage door was going to muffle the possible cuss words that would come out of this mouth if I tried to wire them myself. So I rode the bike up to the local motorcycle shop and let them wire the D2s. Everybody likes a cool sounding bike. But the reason for my next mod was an ulterior motive: reducing weight. The stock muffler on the V-Strom looks like it came off a '57 Chevy, which was okay with me, but if I recall correctly, weighs about 24 pounds. The Yoshimura slip-on weighs about 8 pounds. And I have to admit, sounds a lot better. I believe I purchased it from the Yoshimura website. Then it was time to replace those stock plastic side cases. I purchased the GV Rapid Release Rack and the 37-liter Trekker Outback panniers. I also applied some tech-spec snakeskin to the top of each pannier to reduce the chances of anything slipping that I strapped to the top of the cases. I couldn't be more pleased with the Outback Trekkers. The quality is top-notch. The next modification turned out to be a lifesaver on the trip. I ran into a couple of days in British Columbia and Yukon Territory of very cold and wet weather, and these Oxford heated grips made what could have been an extremely miserable day just a miserable day. The lighting conditions in the garage weren't very good when I installed the grips, and I didn't realize how much super glue I was applying to the handlebars. Other than that, installation was fairly easy, until I tried to step away from the bike and found that I'd glued my feet to the garage floor. I purchased a Spot Gen 3 GPS tracker, which allows anyone during my trips to click the link on my website and track my location in real time. It can send 2 different pre-written messages to people on a predefined list with the check-in button and the message button. It has a send help button if you break down, which can go directly to anyone you desire, such as AAA or friends. It also has an SOS button, which will send a message to the nearest emergency response and rescue team in case of a serious emergency, all through GPS. So it'll work just about anywhere in the world. I also purchased the Xena disc lock to help keep the bike and my gear secure. Then I purchased a Garmin Zumo 350 GPS. I hardwired it to the bike so I wouldn't have to be concerned with the battery wearing down. It turns on and begins charging the instant it's connected to the mount. I'm really happy with the Zumo. At the time of my 2015 Alaska trip, I had an iPhone 5S, and I bought this waterproof case which worked great. It was also hardwired to the bike. However, after one of the iPhone updates, the iPhone would no longer recognize nor allow the charger that came with the case to work. Operator error is also a possibility here too, but we'll get into that subject later in the video. All of these devices are attached to the bike using RAM mounts, which I'm a huge fan of. I'll also dive into those a little deeper in the camera section of this video. I knew I had at least 3,000 miles of wear left on the Bridgestone Battlewing tires, which are the tires that came on the bike when I bought it, so I rode on those tires from Denver to Fairbanks and purchased a set of Heidenau K60s online before I left on my trip and had them shipped to Adventure Cycle Works in Fairbanks, where I had Dan mount the tires and change the oil in the bike the day before I rode the Dalton. I have to say both the Battlewings, which are 80/20 tires, and the K60s, which are 50/50 tires, performed great on the whole trip. Figuring at some point in the distant future, after this Alaska trip, I would eventually buy a top case, I purchased and installed this SW Motec adapter plate and this large tail plate that accommodates the 2-gallon Rotopacks that I bought. The large tail plate attaches to the adapter plate with these quarter-turn clips, which makes attaching and detaching a breeze. I own several different Wolfman motorcycle luggage products, and I'm really pleased with the quality. They're American made in Longmont, Colorado, about 45 minutes north of my home. I purchased the Rainier tank bag nearly 8 years ago, and it's still holding up like a new one. I also purchased 2 Expedition dry duffel bags, the medium size, one for my clothes and one for my camping gear. I also purchased 2 Wolfman bottle holders, which I attached to the side cases, one for my water bottle and one for my bear spray. I also had various other small dry bags on board, carrying items like tools, warm riding gear, and camera gear, such as a tripod and a gimbal. I also brought tools, a supply of nuts and bolts, fuses and assorted electrical connectors, a small air compressor, a tire plug kit, a tow strap, and of course a first aid kit. That pretty much covers most of the modifications, accessories, and farkles. Coming up in part 2 and 3, I'll try to tackle the changes I've made after the trip, the riding gear, the cameras, and how I planned the trip.